Hey everyone, this is Crystal, and today I'm creating a 12 by 12 layout for the Sunday sketch at Citrus Twist Kit. So this is the sketch I will be using. I have the October add-on kit here to work with. I do have the October Life Crafted kit and some of the digital things that I printed out off to the side here in case I decide I need a little bit something extra and want to grab one of those. This is the photo I'm going to scrapbook today. This is actually one I pulled from the listing when we listed our house. Our old house, the house we moved out of. We listed it recently and it sold recently. We actually have our closing date coming this upcoming week, and I've just been feeling a lot of things about memories of this house and being a little bit sad to see it go, but also being very relieved to finally have not have to worry about it. So I thought I would just do a layout kind of documenting that story, and just pulled this from the actual real estate listing of the house. And I turned it black and white because I knew there were lots of vintage elements in this kit, and it wasn't really important that it be the colors of the house. It just kind of represents the whole idea of selling this house. There are two photos in the sketch, but I'm just going to stick with this one and probably put maybe a tag or a journal card or something right here. I haven't quite figured that out yet. It depends on what I decide to pull from the kit. So that is all I have to tell you about to start with. I am just going to open this up and get started.
I'm going to start by going through the papers that are in this kit to find some to use on this layout. There are lots of layers on this sketch behind the photos, so I definitely want to start there. I did look at that sheet of thickers to see if I could find a title. I have an idea for a title already, so I just need to go through the papers and pick out some to use here. There are so many gorgeous papers in this kit. It's all from Marigold. It's all absolutely beautiful. It all works well together. I had a really hard time deciding which ones to use. I wanted to use them all, but I knew I needed to keep a fairly limited color palette here and a fairly limited number of papers, or it would just start to look a little too overwhelming. So I went with a couple neutrals and that floral. So I pulled out the kind of ledger paper and that floral paper and the wood grain, although I realize here in just a second that the other side of the wood grain is that kind of folklorish print that I definitely want to use for another project. So I'm going to fix that by pulling a paper from the Life Crafted kit. You'll see here in just a second. But first, I want to give my photo a white border. Since there's going to be all these different layers, I want to make sure that my photo stands out. So by adding just a really thin white border around my photo, it helps it just stand out from all those colorful layers. I just used a scrap piece of paper. It's actually the same cardstock that I'm using as the background, which is from the kit, so it'll blend in. It's not going to stand out as a different color white. I don't want to add another color white because, of course, the color of white that's in the crepe paper collection is slightly off-white, and that is definitely going to be on my layout. And then I have the bright white background, so I don't want to add in another one, which is why I made sure to use a paper that would be the same as one of the other whites on the page. Okay, so that was where I just noticed that the other side of that wood grain paper is that folklore print that I really love. So I'm going to go through the papers in the Life Crafted kit. I was pretty sure there was a wood grain, and there definitely was, and it's really similar to the one that's in the add-on kit, so I felt like it would work perfectly with the other papers that I've chosen here, and then I can save the other side of that paper for another project. So I'm just kind of working out how I want these layers to go. I'm sticking really close to the sketch for this one. I thought the sketch was beautiful, and I just wanted to do it kind of as it was and honor it in that way. And I knew that these papers would look beautiful layered together. So I'm not measuring anything. I'm just using the top layer to cut the bottom layer or the one underneath it and layering them up so that you can see all of these gorgeous patterns and designs beneath the ones that are on top of them. So I needed to trim off just a little bit. For some reason I hadn't gotten that cut straight, so I needed to trim it just a bit more to make it straight and even, and then that's pretty much it. Those are going to be my layers. Really the only things Left to decide are the embellishments and the title, and there is that one strip of paper at the bottom. I'm just trying to figure out which of these papers I want to use. I decide to bring in another pattern. It's actually the B side of one of the other patterns that I've already used, and then I am going to add in a little bit of that wood grain because I felt like I needed to bring in a little bit more of that kind of darker pattern. I cut it wonky so that you'll just be able to see it peek out over the top of that other pattern, the pink and white pattern at the bottom of the page. It'll just kind of barely stick out. And then that tag that's on the sketch, I'll add a tag there to the bottom, kind of where they overlap. So that is my plan for that. I do end up having to trim off a bit of this. It was covering up too much of the wood grain, so I just lowered it a little bit, and then I will trim off the excess when I have all these other layers glued down. So I'm just adding a little bit of glue to these layers. I don't want to add too much because I will stitch them down just like they're shown in the sketch. So I don't want to gum up my sewing machine too much. So I'm just trying to add a little bit of glue just to make sure they stay in place while I stitch. I am using my T-square ruler to line everything up. I feel like when the layers are this kind of concentric that they really do need to be straight or it's going to be very obvious that they're misaligned. So I just use that ruler to make sure it all is straight with each other, that they're all straight with each other. Okay, now that I have them kind of tacked down, I can bring out my sewing machine. I use just a really inexpensive Singer sewing machine that I bought way back when I think I was in my first year of college. It's very old. Yeah, it still works fine. I hardly ever use it for sewing fabric anymore. It pretty much always is for paper these days, but it still works. It still works great. And it's been through a lot. So, yeah, it was just an inexpensive one. I think I ordered off of Amazon back back in the day. So I'm gonna just stitch basically across the top of each of these layers. I had to lift up the paper. I didn't realize that I needed to actually stitch that one down before gluing down the ones on top of it until it was too late, but that's fine. The glue I use or the tape runner I use isn't permanent right away, so I was able to just kind of peel those up and then add the stitching and then stick them back down and stitch over the top of the other layers. I'm also stitching along that bottom piece at the bottom of the page. I did trim that off first just to make sure that my stitching actually showed up on the page and didn't get trimmed off with the excess. And then I am not going to pull through these strings that are kind of hanging off. Normally I'd pull them through the back and adhere them with some washi tape or something to make sure that all of the stitching didn't come unraveled. But for this one, I kind of wanted the messy look of those loose strings. So I did cut them short, but I didn't pull them through to the back and tape them down. And they're not going anywhere. I didn't back stitch or anything, but I'm not worried about them pulling out. And there is still glue there too, or tape runner holding it all down as well. So I need something to go in that spot where the second photo was supposed to be. I'm also looking for things to go into the pocket that I have not yet created, but I know I want to add to the left of my photo. So I'm looking for things I can stick in the pocket that can stick out of the pocket, and also something to go in that other spot. I found a couple things for the pocket. I didn't find a piece of ephemera that I liked for the second photo position, so I ended up pulling out a couple cut apart sheets. These are papers from the kit that you can cut apart for additional embellishment and journaling spots. And I'm going to end up cutting out one of these tags. I'm going to go with that green one, mostly because I didn't want another competing pattern. So there were lots of florals on that sheet. I didn't want another floral or anything that would compete with the patterns that I already have on the page. And I liked the dark tone of that green tag because I had already pulled out that gold vellum piece, and I thought it would look nice over the top of a darker pattern. So that's what I'm going to go with. Right now I'm trying to think about how to create a pocket. I decided to use one of the vintage papers, one of the vintage book pages that came in the add-on kit, and I'm just going to score it and just kind of make my own pocket. So I measured how wide it needed to be, or I'm about to measure how wide it needs to be, and then I measure the piece of uh, the book page itself, and then I'm just scoring inside from the edge until I get the right dimension in the center. So the back edges are not going to touch. It's not wide enough to create an actual standalone pocket, but you're never going to see that backside. It's going to be glued down to the page, so it'll work just fine. So I just used my score tool. That's just a little scoreboard to score 3 sides of it, and then I'm folding it down, and then I'm just gluing in the corners. I also cut out those extra corner pieces so that it would lay flat. And that's pretty much it. I will trim off just a little bit at the top. It was a little bit too tall. And then I am going to use, I think this is a 1¼ inch hole punch, circle punch, and I'm going to cut a little circle out of the top of it. That was in the sketch actually. So that's not something that I thought of on my own. I'm just doing exactly as the sketch tells me to. So I'm going to just adhere that down. I'm getting it placed so that you can still see all the layers around it. And then I'm going to stick these 2 little journal cards inside. So I chose one that had a house on it, which I thought was absolutely perfect for this layout for obvious reasons. And then there was another one that was just a very neutral pattern. And I thought that between the two, I would have enough space to add all the journaling that I wanted to add for this story of this page. And I like that it's hidden. I generally am a bit wary of adding journaling to the front of my pages. I like to add it in pockets or hidden, or sometimes on the back of the page even. I tend to kind of design myself out of a journaling spot usually, so having a pocket to stick journaling in works really well for me. So I added craft foam to the back of my photo. I'm adding a bit more craft foam to the tag so that it can kind of sit on top of the photo. You can see I have craft foam on half of it, and then the other side of the tag just glues directly down to the photo itself. I'm also adding this label that I cut from that same cut apart sheet. You can see on the sketch the title sits within a label, and then there's stamping up above it. But because I've used that book page for my little pocket, I'm not going to be able to stamp directly on top of it. You won't be able to see the stamping if I do that. So I'm going to stamp on the tag, or the label that is, and add my title below it straight onto the book page, onto the layers of the page that I'm working on. So I'm going to use the title Home Sweet Home. I'm going to mix alphas here. I did grab the darker teal alpha from the Life Crafted kit to see if I wanted to use it instead, but it didn't quite match the tone of green that was already on the page, and I felt like it was too dark. It kind of drew your attention too much. So I'm going to use that lighter mint alpha uh, along with the word sweet from those stickers that were in the kit. And I was just looking at the stamps. I am going to do some stamping before I add my title, just because I want to stamp on that tag before I glue it down. I am not a very confident stamper, so I tend to like to stamp before I actually add it to the page so that if I mess it up, I can just use a different tag and restamp it. I'm choosing the word change from the larger 4x6 stamp, and a little phrase from the Traveler's Notebook stamp set as well, and I'm going to layer those two on this label. The word change comes from that 4x6 stamp, and then I can't remember what the other phrase says, and I don't have it in front of me, and I can't see it on the screen yet, but you'll see it here in a second. I felt like it was a really perfect phrase for this kind of change in our life. A lot is changing right now with us, so something about the future, or yeah, I can't remember. I'm so sorry. I hope you can read it because it was really perfect for this layout. So I'm just kind of figuring out where that word sweet is going to sit, and then I'm going to use my thicker alignment tool to spell out the word home and figure out where that can go above and below the center part of my title. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down that tag. I did tuck it under the photo a little bit, and then I'm overlapping the word home over the top of that label. I'm sorry, not a tag, the label. And just so that everything kind of nestles together and feels like it all fits. When you have too much space between the elements on your page, they feel to me like they're just floating there, like they don't belong. But if you kind of let everything touch and let everything overlap and nestle together, then it just feels more natural. It feels like it belongs on the page, and it was meant to go there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just letting everything kind of bump up against each other and overlap a bit to all get real nice and cozy there on the left side of my page. So I have just a few more things to do here. I want to add a label to the bottom of the page. I want to do a little bit more stamping. I pulled a label. This is actually from the printable, the digital printable that you get free as a subscriber, but you can purchase separately in the shop as well. And I'm just going to use that to add my date stamp. I'm using a a date stamp that has the full month written out, and I stamped it just a couple times. It just filled up the label a bit more, and there was less kind of empty space there when I did it that way. And then I wanted to also add a few of these puffy stickers just because they're super adorable, and I wanted to add some onto the page. There's one that's a little house, and I added it there at the bottom of the page next to my date stamp. I'm also going to add a couple of these florals just to tie in the floral that is in the background in that bottom layer of paper. So I added one to the corner of the label that I stamped on, and I also added one on top of the vellum piece that overlaps the tag, and I'm going to add a little phrase sticker from the Life Crafted kit to that vellum piece, kind of tucked under that little floral puffy sticker as well. I'm just deciding which one. There were several on this that would have worked. I think I ended up going with something about the moment, or in the moment, or this moment, or something like that. So I'm nearly done now. I want to do a little bit more stamping. I added another little gold heart to the bottom cluster there. That gives me kind of a triangle of gold on the page. And then I found another tiny stamp that says onward. I think it's from the Life Crafted kit, if I'm not mistaken. I was trying to see if I could stamp one of those kind of leaf stamps from the 4x6 stamp onto the page, but it just didn't quite look right. So instead, I'm going to use this tiny word that says onward. Actually, it might be from the Traveler's Notebook stamp set now that I'm looking at it. It's one or the other. And then, oh yeah, it was from the Traveler's Notebook stamp set. And then I find another phrase from the Life Crafted stamp that I'm going to add just below my title to fill in that little bit of blank space there. It's a long phrase, so to fit it onto that spot of pink paper, I'm going to just partially ink it. I'm going to ink half and then clean the stamp really well and ink the other half so I can stack the two and fit them onto that little pink spot. And then that's it. That's my page all done. I hope you enjoyed this process. There are tons of close-up photos coming up so you can see all those little details. And don't forget to go check out the blog, the Citrus Twiscuits blog as well. There you can get a copy of the sketch for yourself and see all of these photos up close and personal. I hope you'll play along and try the sketch out for yourself as well. Be sure to tag us if you do. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you back here very soon.